right, here we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome this evening to our Fireside Chat as part of our Startup Sisters programming. I'm Preston James. I am the CEO, co-founder of DivInc. We're based out of Austin. We're a nonprofit startup accelerator and startup ecosystem builder. We started in Austin roughly 4 years ago. We're about to celebrate our 4th anniversary at the end of June. So we're super proud of that. And we've actually hosted 6 accelerator programs, 6 cohorts, roughly 70 companies that we've helped launch since 2016. And we're proud of the fact that we are focused exclusively on underrepresented founders. And all of you who are attending this call, I'm sure, are well aware of the challenges associated with underrepresented founders getting access to the critical resources that they need to build successful growth companies. And so we're excited and proud of what we're doing. And tremendous opportunity, tremendous team. We're also looking and in the process of expanding into Houston, Texas, and we'll look where we can actually grow and scale our impact. Houston represents a tremendous opportunity as an emerging startup market, and so we're really excited about that. And in the process of all our growth, we uncovered something that we knew deep down that we had to do. We created Startup Sisters as our Women of Color initiative. And we're excited about that because we know that women of color specifically are the fastest growing entrepreneur demographic in the nation. Yet, the challenges that they face have been documented over time, and we'll talk more about that. But the access to capital, the financial capital, has been really unequal, inequitable in this space, and we want to change that. We want to help change that. So Startup Sisters is an initiative to really build this women of color network and bring women of color, bring the resources really to the women of color so they can build their growth businesses successfully. We want more multi-million-dollar businesses, billion-dollar businesses out there. And so we're going to do everything that we can within our program, as well as collaborate with our partners to make that happen. Everything from mentorship to workshops, and also access to financial capital. So we really appreciate you joining us on this journey and really making this network so extremely valuable as we move forward. And the vision of Startup Sisters really, we want to take this to the next level, right? As I said, let's help these women of color, not just because it's a cool thing to do, but ultimately, if you look at the impact to our U.S. economy, if our sisters are successful, you're talking about millions of jobs. You're talking about wealth generation over time. The impact to our society, socioeconomic conditions, bringing more equity and wealth and income into our communities. That's what this is all about. So thank you for being part of this. Lastly, before we kick in, because I want to give extra time for the fireside chat, right? But I do want to share, this is, tonight is somewhat of a little bit of a reunion for me and our guest speaker tonight, Kathryn Finney. And so Kathryn and I had a few moments to catch up, but Kathryn and I met roughly 8 years ago in New York City when she was first starting Digital Undivided. And I was actually, I'll be honest, I was a baby in the startup ecosystem. I ain't know nothing about nothing. I was a 20-year veteran at Dell, but I was heading up this entrepreneurship initiative and somehow got connected to meet with Kathryn. And we just had this really deep conversation about, the challenges and what she was doing, how she was going to make a difference. And lo and behold, here we are 8 years later, and, this woman, this sister has done things in the industry that are just absolutely mind-blowing. And I truly consider her a great friend, a pioneer in this industry. I mean, if you're a woman of color looking at a woman of color who's been successful, has been there, done that, has a world of wisdom and experience, we have that special person here tonight. So I'm super excited and so happy that we're coming together finally, after 8 years. I mean, we've seen each other, but this is the first time we're actually sitting down, together in a while. So it's my great pleasure, and I hope you all really enjoy this conversation tonight. So with that said, I am going to turn it over to our DivInc Houston lead, Ms. Joy M. Hutton, who's going to moderate the Fireside Chat, and then also my dear friend, Kathryn Finney, who joins us this evening from Atlanta, right? So welcome, and Joy, it's all yours.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Preston, and I'm going to take you off the screen. So we're focused on me and Kathryn.
And your hair, yes.
Thank you. All right, so we'll bring Preston back at the end. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I have to say, I'm really excited about this, Kathryn, because I am actually a grant recipient of the DivInc Fund.
Yay!
Yes, so I'm really excited. It's like a full circle moment. So thank you so much for all that you do. This is just an amazing moment for me to be talking to you, because I didn't even realize that you were behind the Budget Fashionista. So that is also, I was like, oh my God. Yes, I was like, what? And that took me way back. So you really have been around for a long time, just having all these pioneering moments. So we have so much to talk about. We have lots of questions for you, and everyone in the chat, feel free to chime in with any questions that you have as well, because we want to make sure we get all this good juice in this brain of Kathryn's today. So we do have a poll. So guys, if you can answer the poll so we can see who's in the building. I'm going to close it in a few minutes, but it looks like most of the people on are actually startup founders, and they're in the ideation phase. So we'll have a lot to talk about today. So going to close that in a minute, and then we'll see who's online. So we know, you had a big part to play. I mean, the Project Diane report, which I want you to talk about. And I'm a firm believer that along with the Digital Undivided's work, that the Project Diane report was the single greatest catalyst for gaining greater support for women of color entrepreneurs than anything else that has ever been seen in the industry. And so now we have almost 50 Black women, maybe a few more at this point, who have raised $1 million or more compared to just 3 years ago when that number was about 15 women. So with Digital Undivided and other projects, you've seen it all basically. So how have things, and I know this is kind of a loaded question, but one, tell the audience what Project Diane report is, and how have things changed for women of color over the last 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, well, first, it's so great to be with you all today. I wish I could be in person, but
I know.
the second best thing. It's been great. I got myself a ring light. I got the makeup situation together, so I'm ready to talk. Project Diane started really in 2014. We had, prior 2 years, I did this conference called Focus 100, which was a gathering of women of color, Black and Latinx women, startup founders. We had started in 2012 and had ended it in 2014. I think Preston had actually attended a couple of them. And so we wanted to expand a part of what we were doing, which is our Focus Fellow program, into something bigger. We knew that it was virtually impossible for women of color to raise money. because we were at the time a for-profit startup and it was virtually impossible to raise money. And so we wanted to create a program. The problem is that there was no data. There was literally no data even on women in the startup community, let alone Black women or Latinx women. And so I remember going to look at Crunchbase, which had just started, and they were collecting data on all the startups. They did not even have a prompt to ask for gender. No prompt for race, that we weren't expecting, but not even for gender. And so we realized that in order for us to do to solve a problem, we needed to quantify what the problem exactly was. What is the baseline? What is actually going on? And so we started Project Diane. Like most women initially, I was like, oh, how are we gonna do this? Who are we gonna find to do it? And my husband said to me, didn't you graduate from Yale with like a degree in epidemiology? Like, you know how to do research, so why aren't you the one doing it? And it was just kind of like this aha moment. I think sometimes as a woman, we forget the power that we have. We forget our own capacity to do amazing, great things. And so I was like, oh yeah, I can do it. And so we did it. The first one came out in 2016. At the time, there was only 88 Black women-led startups, 88. At the time, the average raise by a Black woman entrepreneur in 2016 startup was $36,000. The average raise by mostly white, mostly male, failed startups, these are startups that did not work and ended their business, was 1.3 million. So we weren't even raising enough to really fail. We were getting most of our funding from ourselves. It was from home equity lines. It was from 401ks. When we could, and those of us who had this would get it from family members. But as I told somebody, you know, if I borrow 50K from my family, they want it back, and they really want it back. They don't want it back like 5 years from now. They want to know the exact date they're going to get it back, right?
Exactly.
They need to know, like, I need it in writing that I'm going to have it back. I need to know how you're going to get it back to me. And so it was really stark, you know, in 2018, we did a follow-up. And it was really interesting. Things had changed. In 2016, there was only 11 Black women who had raised over $1 million. A true seed round is usually considered like 5 to 10, right? So we were not even raising enough to have a true seed round. Wow. By 2018, that number had tripled to over 30, which was exciting. It's still not great, but it's better.
Right.
2018, we were able to dig a little bit deeper as to who these women are. So we looked at where people went to school. What we found was Howard University produced more Black women startup founders than Harvard, MIT, Stanford. UCLA produced more Latina women founders than MIT, Harvard, Stanford. So if you were an investor looking to invest in incredible women founders, and you went to MIT or Carnegie Mellon, you're not going to find diversity. The network is kind of like the network effect. Your network was not going to have those women in it. So if you wanted to, you need to go to UCLA, you need to go to Howard. I joked with one VC, I said, go to Howard's homecoming. You want to have the time of your life. Nothing like you've ever seen before. But that's where you need to be. And that was really, really helpful to see the impact of the reports have been quite significant. Another Project Diane report is coming out this year in 2020, and that's going to be pretty amazing. That's looking deeper into what makes a Black or Latina woman successful. Like, what are the characteristics? Like, what are the support that's needed? Looking at geographical differences. Looking at where is their money really coming from? Like, who are the people who are really writing the checks? So that's
what we want to know.
That's what you want to know, right? Because as a woman, look, we have so many things pulling at our time right now. We do not have the time to do racial sensitivity courses for people. Like, we need you to just write the checks so that we can go do our business. And so I think it's important to know who are the people who have gotten over whatever they need to get over to be able to write the check. Because as an entrepreneur, my job is to grow and build my business, not to teach you about race. That is not my job. And that's an unfair burden you're putting on me so that I can't develop and grow my company, because that takes time away. Or I can't have the personal care time that I need in order to show up fully. Or, you know, I'm so angry that I have to do it that afterwards I have to spend 2 hours coming down. And that's happened to me a number of times. You know, like, I think we've all had that where you've had to like come down after a meeting and like, can you believe he said that to me? But, you know, exactly. And then that takes 2 hours away where I could have been developing a new product line. I could have been coding. I could have talked with my son. I could have had a breather. You know, what else? There's so much other things I could have did with that 2 hours rather than teach you about race. And I think that's really important as women of color, that we really stay laser focused and make sure that we don't fall into those traps.
It's hard not to, though, because when you're constantly being told no, 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 and you automatically think it's because of race, right? But sometimes it's, you know, it may just be you don't have a good product or service, or you don't have, or it's a lack of preparedness. But I do think that sometimes the lack of preparedness also links back to race because of the access to resources and things like that. So it's like, how do we, it's almost like we have to do some retraining, right? Because we don't want to spend energy on that. But if you're being you're being told no so many times, you start to think it is because of that. And then you look at the numbers and you're like, oh, it has to be, you know.
But, you know, I would even challenge us on this non-preparedness.
Right.
Michelle Obama tells this story. Actually, someone tells a story about Michelle Obama. She was being interviewed by Oprah. And I'm like obsessed by Michelle Obama. I just am, like her outfits. Like,
who is
but
that?
anyway, but like she's like my best friend in my head. And she was being interviewed by Oprah, and Oprah asked her, well, you know, you're at these tables with these world leaders, right? How do you not get scared? Like, how do you not like not feel like inferior, right? And she said, what I realized very quickly is that they're not that smart. And I think for us as Black women, as Latinas, we need to realize the white dudes are not coming in prepared. They're not. They're really, really not. I've sat in some of them. They're really not coming in prepared. What they're coming in with is their white skin. And that is what's giving them the advantage, right? And the whole trope that we have to be twice as good and things like that. So I think if we let go of that, they're somehow better and we're not prepared. I have rarely seen a woman of color come into a meeting not prepared in terms of like, sometimes overly prepared, to be really honest, like too much. Like you don't have to do that much, but like that is not our problem. And again, the white guys show up and they are so not prepared. Like they are so not prepared, but because of their white skin, because of their gender, they're given this sort of flexibility and paths. I think at some point we're going to have to realize that, you know, respectability politics and respectability isn't necessarily working either for us, right? And that we just have to be authentic and come in with our full selves. We need to be prepared, things, you know, no misspellings on slides, stuff like that. Yes, but we are enough. As one of my friends, Cheryl Conti, is one of the first Black women to sell her startup to a Fortune 500 company. She would always say, you know, remember, you're the smartest, coolest person in the room. Like they are literally trying to be like you. They're very uninteresting. They're very bland. She said they grew up eating stovetop stuffing. Their parties, they didn't have like she's like, remember, you are the coolest thing they have met that day. Like you have helped them. And so if you come in with that attitude, and that doesn't mean be mean or not gracious or anything like that. I'm not talking about that, but that you are interesting, you are amazing. They need to meet with you because they really do need to meet with you. Then it changes the relationship and changes the dynamics quite a bit.
Absolutely. And I think to your point, having that level of confidence too. And sometimes after being told no so many times, your confidence level is just shot, you know, and so building yourself back up again, getting back on that horse. So that's really good. So you remind people all the time that women of color are the most valuable resources in the world, kind of like you just did. And especially now during COVID-19, women of color are on the front lines. In the midst of this global crisis, you and your amazing team have figured out how to get micro investment to over 1,000 Black women entrepreneurs in less than 6 weeks with your Dooney Fund, which, as I said, shout out, I'm a grant recipient. And, you know, this was named after your grandmother, which is amazing. And you funded this out of your own money. So we absolutely need more of this short-term and long-term support because it's limited. So can you break it down how we can do more of this in our own communities and with our allies so we can move the needle forward and faster? You know, like DivInc is, you know, providing resources through Startup Sisters and through the general DivInc network. So how can we do that? Like what you've done?
You know, and thank you so much for sharing that. And it's like, I'm so excited to meet you. I'm so proud of you and honored, and just incredible women like you really have reaffirmed my humanity. It really has. And in a really fundamental way at a time where all our humanities are being challenged, right? And so I want to thank you for applying, for showing up, for being you. And I see you, like I do. So thank you. In terms of what we all can do, you know, not everyone can do 1,000. I don't think that should be the focus. It's helping you have friends and family who you know are trying. We all have that cousin who is like, you know, always on the come up, always hustling, like trying to figure out something. And it can start by simply helping that person. And it doesn't take a lot of money at all. Sometimes it doesn't even take money. One of the things I think in our communities is that we don't realize the assets that we have because our assets have been so devalued. So an example I would give is when I was starting Digital Undivided, we started in New York and then we moved to Atlanta, and I was just having the hardest time finding a caregiver for my son. He was really young at the time. And I called my mother. And I was like in tears. You know how you call your mama, like, oh my goodness, the world is in it.
The world is in it.
I was like, you know, I need help. And she's like, do you want me to come? And I was like, I thought she was talking like a week or so. She's like, do you want me to move to Atlanta to help you? And I broke down in tears. I was like, yeah, I do. I need your help. What is the dollar value to that? I do not know. Someone who I know loves me, loves my son, like with all her heart, who is coming and moving to caregive, was available at any time that I needed her. And we always try to be respectful of the time, but anytime we needed her, if we needed a date night, what have you, she was available. And I was like, what is the economic return of it? I don't even know what that would be if I had to put a dollar amount to it. So our families may not be able to write 50K checks to us. They may not be able to do that, but can they help us with childcare? Yeah, and childcare is expensive.
Yes.
Can they? One of our founders in our big program, her father was a landscaper. Her mother is a housekeeper. And so when she was going back between Atlanta and New York, when she was doing her program, her mother would clean her apartment and then make sure she had food, like stocked. So when she returned on Thursday, she came back to a clean apartment and food. And it's like stuff like that. Like it's not a monetary support, but it helped her a great deal. She always had food. She had something to eat. She knew that her place was being taken care of. All of those sort of things, and those things are valuable. And I think for us, we need to start redefining the value that our community does bring, because our communities have amazing assets. Churches, one of our founders raised $10,000 from her church because the pastor mentioned that she was a startup, and they passed the plate, and it was like $10K. How many of us go to mega churches or churches where people are trying to do something and the pastor is really interested in supporting, or the community is really interested in supporting? How are we accessing and utilizing those communities?
Right. I think a lot of the times too, when it comes to asking for money and asking for support in general, we as women of color, we have a hard time doing that.
Yeah.
You know, because we have to be strong for everyone else. And so we're so used to helping everyone else, we don't know how to help ourselves.
And then we're tired with high blood pressure.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? And as my grandma said, the sugar, right? Like,
Right.
because we're doing everything for everybody.
Yes. And we have to shift that, you know, because otherwise we'll just be sitting in a room broke and rolling on the floor. So we have to learn how to ask for help. And if you don't know how to ask for help, then ask somebody else how to ask for help. I think we've all been guilty of that at some point, trying to be strong and no, I don't need help, I'm good. Or like I said, some of us just don't even know where to start. But we have to talk to someone, talking to fellow entrepreneurs, getting a mentor, all of that. So that's great. So let's see. I forgot to share the results of the poll. Let's see. Okay. Most of you answered. Thank you very much. So these are the results. We have 55% startup founders in here. We have some aspiring entrepreneurs, advisors. We have some angel investors in the room.
Ooh, me too, you.
Yes. And let's see, we have people are mostly in the ideation phase or early product and service and pre-revenue. So that's great. And some are generating revenue. Shout out to the people generating revenue. Okay, great. All right. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and launch a second poll, you know, about what people's greatest needs are today while we get started on the next question. All right, so there's a lot of focus on obviously getting equitable access to financial capital. That is like, I swear it's the topic of the century. And in terms of getting access to capital to support women-founded businesses. And we're the ones that are starting the businesses. Black and brown women have been the fastest growing, as you know, demographics of entrepreneurs, but still struggle to get equitable access to capital among other things. And you mentioned in your article, which by the way, if you all have not read Kathryn's article on Medium, you have to go do that. And you noted 2 key learnings in establishing your Dooney Fund. You said that 1, Black women are amazing money managers. We know how to flip that dollar. And 2, people don't trust Black women with money. Can you talk more about this and what should women do with that information?
You know, I think at the root of it is a really tough conversation that we have to have as a nation about whose economic output is valued. And I think it's important for us to remember that for the first 400 years of this country's existence, Black people's economic output was not theirs. They literally did not own the work they produced in any way, shape, or form. And then the argument could be made for the, 50, 75 years post that, or 100 years post that we may have owned it in theory, but it was stifled. Today is the anniversary of the Tulsa Riot Massacre. Many people know about Black Wall Street. It was a section of Tulsa called Greenwood, in which there was a really thriving Black community. My great-grandparents had a restaurant in Tulsa, in Greenwood, and they destroyed the entire community. It was hundreds of successful Black businesses, very successful, a self-sustaining community. All the things that we're told that as Black people we don't do was being done, and this is in 1921. And it was utterly destroyed because a white lady said a Black man stepped on her toe.
Wow.
Right? And I mean, and to have 100 years later and have almost the same exact situations happening 100 years later, almost to the week. I mean, that's not lost, right? We can't ignore that. And so it has to do this distrust, that it's not even distrust, it's that we don't deserve payment for our work. And I think that's a fundamental, almost genetic belief that's in the soil of America, right? Because America was built without payment of our work. Wow. And that's just a fact. I mean, it's the truth. And so what happens is that has carried over generations and generations till now, of this concept of who deserves to have what. So you'll go into a meeting, and I've been in situations like this where you check every box, and you even created new boxes to check, right? You got everything. You have the Ivy League degree, you have tons of experience, you have a business model, you have everything that they say that you should have, and you still don't get it. Or you'll have someone still like, there's something about you, I just don't think you're a culture fit. I don't know what it is. And a lot of that, at the root of that, is really this concept of your economic output is not as valuable to me. And I think that's where that distrust comes from. Because it's not us. Black women are not inherently distrustful. I mean, I said to one, I was at a panel with some white guy VCs, and I said, Black women, we could take one chicken and feed a family of 4 for a week. We will have chicken salad, we'll have chicken sandwiches, we'll have roasted chicken, barbecue chicken. We will make that, we could take $1 and do amazing things with it. Yes. And we're also incredibly talented. So we can do hair in the morning and then go do surgery in the evening, right? Because we're that talented. No joke, when I was at Yale getting my degree in epidemiology, I braided hair on the side to have a little bit of pocket change. Yeah. So literally I was braiding hair and doing experiments in the lab. 4 jobs in college. So right? All sorts of jobs.
We are resourceful, okay?
We will figure it out. We will find a way.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of this. Even though we're shut out of so many spaces, we are still finding a way and saying, okay, you don't want to give me money? I'll find another way. So what are your thoughts? We talked about the challenges a little bit of family and friends round, the family and friends round, because maybe our families don't have the ability to write a $50,000 check or a $100,000 check. What are your thoughts on crowdfunding?
Yeah, I think crowdfunding can be interesting. I think, again, our communities don't have necessarily a ton of resources. So, but I do think crowdfunding is a really effective platform. And when I brought up the church example, that's an example of crowdfunding. So crowdfunding doesn't necessarily have to be online. You can do that. I mean, if you're part of a sorority, you can, so we have these networks. And, there's things like Susu's, which is in the Caribbean community. And, you give $10, right? If you think you go to a large church that has 3,000 people, and if on average, everyone was able to give $10, that would be $30,000 right there, right? Maybe one person can't give you $30,000, but could 3,000 people give $10? Probably. And I think as a community, we need to start rethinking money, because even with the Dooney funds, I was a little taken back by some of the comments I got from Black people, actually, about how we've internalized the distrust ourselves. So, well, I don't know. How do you make sure they're going to do what they say they're going to do? And it's I don't care. It's $100. Do you, boo? If getting your hair and nails done is what you need to do in order to feel empowered, then do you. I love it. Yes. If you're going to go buy web hosting, great. If you're going to use it for Facebook, great. I think some of the ways that we can generate income and generate money to get sort of started is to relook at some of our resources. One of the things I say to people is don't leave your day job until you've met this sort of leave mark. What I mean by leave mark is when I was starting the Budget Fashionista, this was at the beginning of blogging. This was in 2002. And I was running a Black women's health nonprofit in Philadelphia. And what I did was I calculated how much we needed to live. How much money did we have to bring in to live? Not live great. Wasn't flossing. I want to be real clear. We got rid of a car. We did all this stuff. But to live where we weren't struggling. Do you know what I'm saying? Not that we could eat and go grocery shopping and pay our bills and live. That sort of live, right? And I took that number and I was like, as soon as my business reaches this number for a 3-month period, meaning it could sustain this monthly number for at least 3 months, that is the point in which I'm going to leave. And that's what happened. Like when it reached that, I left because I knew that I could sustain myself. And I also know for us as a community, we don't have safety nets in the same way that other people do. You know, I was saying to someone, they were like, well, people could move back home with their parents. I said, but you don't realize some of us are paying our parents' rent. Like you know, like some of us are paying our parents' rent. Like that's a very privileged notion that your parents are doing better than you, or they have more assets than you. And in some of our cases, that's not true. And so it's stuff like that, like coming up with that amount. You know, really, there's a lot of grants out there. You know, basically applying for everything and actually creating a Google Doc, because almost everybody asks the same questions all the time for all these grants. Like they're not really different questions.
Yeah.
So applying a Google Doc that has all the list of questions, and you just cut and paste so that you can quickly apply as much as you need. Networking, and being really deliberate about your networking so you can limit the number of those no's. Like, every VC will take a meeting with you. That's the gig that they don't tell you that. Like because what they do on their end is that they have to show that they've taken a number of meetings to their LPs and the people they answer to. So they have to show that we did 1,000 meetings. You will hear, particularly if you're on the LPs are limited partners. They're the people who invest and fund venture funds. So on their end, you know, the general partners, the people who manage the fund will say, we met with 1,000 people, but they need to say that. That's the whole thing with deal flow. So everyone will take a meeting with you because they need to record that they need that meeting for their own metrics. Right. Furthermore, they need to record that they met with someone of color because they're being asked that by the people who invest in them. So they need to say, well, you know, of the 1,000 meetings, you know, we had last year, 20% of them were women of color. Isn't that great? Now what they're being asked, especially post-COVID, I think this is going to be really important. Okay, of those meetings, how many did you actually write checks to? Wow. That hadn't really been asked before. It was just kind of like, oh, we met with them and it's great. And here's the percentage that we met with. But the question of how many have you actually invested in was not a really strong question that was pushed from the limited partner side as it is now.
That's really.
So we are the coolest people in the room. That's well, they have to, because that's being recorded. That's part of their metrics to meet with us.
Right.
They're not doing us any favors.
That's really good. I think that's a good accountability system too to put in place for VCs. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So since 2012, you built this amazing digital undivided ecosystem that provides support from ideation to incubation to acceleration to investment. And this feeds into a broader ecosystem. How essential or critical do you think these programs are for support, especially those specifically for women of color entrepreneurs? So, you know, there are other programs around the country. So obviously we have DivInc that has an accelerator for women and people of color. We have other programs, Walker's Legacy that does programs, Black Girl Ventures. We have all these amazing programs. How critical do you think it is to have these programs in place?
I think these programs are vitally important. And everyone serves a different segment. Right. There are 23 million Black women in the United States, something like 40 million Latinas. That's like 63 million Black and Latinx women. There is a lot of people that need to be served. I think it's great because we're all tackling something different. DID has really focused on data a lot. A lot of what we do is data. And also kind of because of the political capital we've been able to get, doing stuff that's really different that would be harder for some of our colleagues that are a little bit newer to be able to do. We have that sort of latitude to be able to do that. So Dooney Fund, I could do because I had the privilege of selling the company, had a husband that's has a good job and is an engineer, and I had financial resources where I could fund it myself. And then I had connections to be able to talk with other people to get them on board too. But if I didn't have those resources, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And not everybody has that. And so the role that DID has really played is like this catalyst, like being out in front, like doing these things that other people just could not even think about doing, and showing what's possible. And the fact that we didn't get shot, you know, like that we sit for, and we're still standing, and people are like, oh, okay, we can do this. It's okay to do this. And that's really the role that we've played. I mean, there's many amazing organizations. I just saw in the comments someone mentioned iFund Women, and what Karen and iFund Women are doing is like pretty amazing in terms of getting capital. I definitely encourage everyone to look at their website. And there's people who are trying to figure this out. Like, how do you get capital in a way that's equitable, in a way that is helpful? At what point do you give capital? At what point do you give what capital? You know, at the beginning when you're still trying to figure it out, is $1 million a wise investment? Probably not, because you don't even know what your market is. And so what is the amount? Because you needed money. So what is the amount that's needed to go to the next step? What's the catalyst, right? All of those things that you have people trying to figure out right now.
We have all these organizations, but I think everyone is kind of operating in their own silos.
Yeah.
How can we collaborate better? So obviously, you know, like I said, we have DivInc, we have Digital Undivide, we have Eureka, all these different organizations are doing amazing things, and you have all these entrepreneurship centers and what have you. How can we collaborate better? I just think everybody's just kind of operating their own pockets. Like, I'm going to save 25 entrepreneurs over here and 25 here, and when we can be doing something on a much larger scale.
It's really the funders. It's not the individual organizations. The funders have created the ecosystem where you are disincentivized to work together. Right? They've created false competition when there really is no competition, right? And as a result, it's created this where people are disincentivized from working together. It's rather than funding people working together, right? That should be the goal is, you know, you guys, I want you two to work together. I'm going to give you guys, you know, $500,000 for you guys to do something together. Go, right? That's not the attitude of philanthropy. I think also there's a deep challenge with philanthropy and entrepreneurship, because it's like the complete opposite of entrepreneurship. So it's hard for them to understand how what they're doing is destructive in terms of the way in which they're deploying the capital, because they're not entrepreneurs. They're philanthropists. And that's a very different way of thinking about money and how you deploy money.
Well, that's a much deeper conversation to have then, because we definitely need to change that narrative. Because we could be making an impact on an even larger scale if all of these organizations work together. So that's definitely something to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you see in your crystal ball for the future of women of color entrepreneurs? Like, what do you ultimately want to see happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I like to see some diverse sources of investment and funding and capital, like different ways and different options for us to be able to get capital. I would love to see more of that. I would like to see that those ways and institutions are actually owned by us and not by, white ladies. It's great. Love them, understand. Like, some of my best friends are white ladies. I'm not doing it as a cliche, but true. Right. But I would like to see us have some ownership. I would like to see us start to own the solutions to our problems, because we have this history of other people taking the solutions, many times the solutions we've developed, and then presenting it to us as a product, and we pay for it when the idea originally came from us in the first place. So I'd like to see us really have some ownership in the solutions of diverse capital. I think also there's going to be a great awakening about the power of women of color, particularly Black women. If who we think is going to be a VP choice is chosen. And I think that's going to it's going to put us even more in a limelight. People are going to want us in the room. Again, we're going to be the coolest people in the room. A lot of people are going to want us in the room. And so it'll be interesting to see if that happens, if that person's elected, how that changes discussions around Black women. Does it do the same thing that when Obama became president? I remember in New York, there was this whole big thing of people wanting, kids of color, children of color, to enter into daycare centers. So daycare in New York is like a bloodbath sport. To get your kid into a good daycare center, it's ridiculous. It's like nowhere else is it like this except in New York. It's bananas. But people were wanting at some of the highest end, costliest nursery schools, Black kids, specifically Black kids, and particularly Black boys, because they wanted to make sure their kids would be able to operate in this new world, which I thought was like scary and also fascinating to see that people have that. But I think we'll see. Is that a similar effect that happens if this VP happens? And then what does that mean for Black women-led businesses? What does that mean for Black women-led leaders? That I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see. So my crystal ball says a lot more ownership of the ideas that we produce, a lot more capital. I think definitely a great deal of interest, but I still think we're going to be struggling with how to properly serve this community of entrepreneurs, because the issue isn't entrepreneurship, it's something much deeper. And I don't know if we're really ready to go there as a country, because it's going to be a there that we'll have to go. And so I think it will be better, definitely. But I think there will be still some challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of challenges, what people in the poll, so they said, what are their top 2 greatest needs today? Financial capital. I mean, that's like number 1. And then actually number 1 is plugging into building, expanding strong network of support, having mentors, coaches, and families.
Yeah.
And then 3rd was personal and leadership development. Do you want to speak to any of those?
You know what I always find interesting with women of color, we always talk about mentorship and coaches. White guys never talk about that. Because they have sponsors.
Right.
They don't talk about, like, we're like literally the only group that I hear talk about, I need a mentor. Like, I don't ever hear white guys say that. It's and I'm not saying that as a criticism of us, it's just a really interesting reflection. They have sponsors. And I think what we need to move away from are mentors to sponsors. And what's the difference, right? A mentor will show you the road. They'll like maybe even like walk you to the edge of it. A mentor will like show you the road, grab your hand, take your hand, walk you down the road, help you get to the next part of the road. And they're going to lead you and really put their political power behind you. Their political capital, their personal capital behind you. And I think that's super important to be able to have sponsors. And I think as women of color, we have to figure out how do we get more of those people who walk us into the door. I remember saying to one colleague who, would send me emails, okay, I can email you, I can hook you via email with this person, that person. I said, you've got to do the ask. You've got to do the ask. Exactly. Like, look, as a Black woman, if I do the ask, it's going to be, 5,000. If you do the ask, it's going to be 500. It just is what it is. It has nothing to do with me or my presentation or anything. It is, again, about this whose economic output is valued, whose word is valued. So if you as a white male VC says this, they're going to hear you in a very different way than if I say it. And that's just a fact. So we need to find more sponsors and sponsors of all races and gender.
Absolutely.
And yes, I've never seen anything like a white dude who has privilege and power and seeing them tell another white dude what he was going to do. like telling him this is what you're going to do for her. And I was like,
Right.
wow, that's how that works.
Said no one ever.
Right? Like, I mean, I was just like, wow, that's deep. He was like, this is what you're going to do. Like, and so having those type of sponsors and allies are important to us, particularly in business. And so figuring out how do we get them, that's a whole nother challenge.
Right. Yeah, that is. And I think too, like you said, asking for warm introductions, because those cold emails or whatever, they're just going into space. And so I think, yeah, you have to have somebody walk you in the door, because they're like, who are you? You know, and I've heard VCs say it out of their mouth. I've been on calls and people are like, can I email you? And they're like, well, I'd prefer you have someone I know and email me, because otherwise I don't feel.
Who are you?
Yeah, who are
Not
you?
in a mean way, but like literally, I don't know who you are. Yeah.
And then just coming out the gate asking for money is just not the way to do it either. I think we have to craft better responses to people too.
You know, but again, I want to caution us from putting unfair burdens on us, because I get a lot of pitches from my dudes where they just come out and ask for money. Like,
really?
Oh yeah, a lot that ask for
So
money.
many different things though, because some VCs are like, no, don't ask me, and then some are like, ask me for what you want. But I don't know.
I mean, I think that's stupid. Of course, you're a VC. Your job is to invest, so people are going to ask you for money. That's your job, is to invest money. So it's weird that you wouldn't expect people to ask you for money. Like, what are they supposed to ask you for? That's literally your job. Like, if you're a doctor and someone asks you for a flu shot, are you going to be like, oh, don't ask me for a flu shot? You just got to suggest it. That's your job to do that. Like, literally your job is to do that. I think one of the things I'd like to see happen in the startup world is to, particularly in communities of color, is to take away some of the power that we've given VCs in our community. We like, and again, my white male friends do not give VCs any power, actually, at all. They do not. They're like, you want to invest in me, this like gadget that I have that no one's going to use, but I think it's a great thing, right? We though don't do that. We give them a lot of power. VCs have to invest money. They have to. That is their job. And the money they're investing, unless they're at a firm like Andreessen Horowitz or one of the really top firms where you have to actually, you don't get, you have to invest your dollars. They're investing other people's dollars. And sometimes the other people's dollars they're investing is your parents and your grandparents, because their major LPs are funds, mostly the pension funds of public employees. So they need to, that's their job to invest. That is their job to take meetings with you. Literally, that is their job. So don't feel like they're doing any favor for you by doing that. And they need to invest. You cannot sit on a fund and not invest in anybody. Like, that's just not, like, you can't, like, we're just going to keep, like, you know, $50 million in the bank and not invest. Like, no, they actually have to deploy that capital. And so, and interesting enough, the same with foundations. If anybody's involved with nonprofits, foundations have a minimal amount that they have to deploy each year of their capital. They literally have to give this money away, else they'll lose it.
Right.
So, you know, I think for us, rethinking how we take power away, or, you know, that, or we don't give as much power to these investors or money people. We just give a lot of power to them. And if we could figure out how do we take some of that power away, because it is their job. A bank's job is to loan money. That really is how the bank makes money, is by loaning money. Like, they don't make money from your deposits, really, right? And so they need to give us loans, because they need to do that. That's their job. And I think if we start having discussions around that, which is what I'm hoping that we will in the future, is we start talking about how the money people need us as much as we need them.
Right.
That we can sort of shift some of these relationships.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting you said that, because yeah, we do give them too much power. We're so worried about what they will think, how to craft this email, how to have this conversation, and when we should just be like, listen, this is what I need. Like you said, you have men, they're just like, this is what I need. They're more direct. There's no finessing of any kind. They just ask for what they want. And so with the latest poll, it was asking, how confident are you about your knowledge and network to gain equity investment successfully? And so not everyone replied, but most people said that they were somewhat confident, trying, but I have a lot more to learn. And so I think a lot of it, I think for me too, I mean, it's a confidence thing, you know, because you've heard so many no. So what do I have to change to get that yes? So that's a whole other conversation. So let's shift for a moment. Let's talk more about you. You know, you've had an amazing journey thus far. You're just an amazing human being, period. And I was like, I was talking to people and I'm like, wait, you don't know who Kathryn Finney is? Like, what do you mean? And so I know you are not even done yet. And as I said to people, read that article on Medium. But a lot of people don't really know your story. So, you know, what you've built, you know, endured, sacrificed to be where you are today. And you've recently made the big announcement that you're moving on from Digital Undivided to begin the next journey in your life, which I know is going to be huge. And so share if you whatever part of this journey you want to share with us about kind of why factors behind this decision, why now, and what's next for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I am someone who likes to build things.
Yes.
That is what I like to do. I mean, in all sorts of things. Like I have a big project right now where I'm building like an irrigation system for my backyard. I'm very excited about it. Got some tubing and stuff like that. Like I'm literally building it. I like to do that. As a builder and as an innovator, my goal is not to stay someplace for years and years and years. That's not of interest to me. I think one of the things that I'm trying to model is like leaving doesn't have to be bad. And I think as women of color, we're often told that we have to stay at places and we have to stay at them forever. It doesn't have to be bad. You can grow. We get that opportunity too, right? And so I'm hoping that to really model that. I think too, for me, was a nonprofit, and that space was just really frustrating for me. Not because of other nonprofits, not that at all, because other nonprofits were amazing. There was amazing leaders, but it was more like the structure of it. Like you were literally limited in certain ways that were just stupid to me, and that stifled innovation. I know more about IRS tax law than I ever want to know in my entire life. Like I could literally write a book. I really should be like a nonprofit tax attorney because I've learned all of this stuff. But it was just really limiting. You know, it just the infrastructure was, particularly when you're an innovator, it just really, really, really is limiting. And it's not made for that on purpose, right? This is public. You know, when you're not for profit, you don't pay taxes because you don't get profit, right? So technically that money that you're retaining is public money, because if you weren't retaining it, it would go into our public coffers. So I get why there's that infrastructure, because you want to maintain public money. That's a big responsibility. The problem with that, it's really hard to be innovative with that, right? It's slow. It's you just can't be. And so you feel really constricted. Also, there is a clear barrier to the amount of money that Black women can raise as a nonprofit leader. And it's well documented. Echo and Green, in which I'm a fellow, they recently published a report on the disparities in philanthropic funding for people of color, and it's stark. It is stark. So all of those things just created this like limit for me. It really, really did, where it was just like, I can't do this. Like it just was, you know, the hard part for me is that there's such an exceptionally talented staff at Div. I mean, just so talented and so innovative and so moving. And that's the hard part about leaving, is really the people, the community in which you're now a part of. Like, you know, not having a day-to-day involvement with the community. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to adjust to that, to be really honest. I think it's going to be really hard, but I'm giving myself a gift of being able to take a break and breathe. And that's not a gift women of color we get a lot. And I'm fortunate to be in a position where I can give myself that gift.
That's powerful. Yeah, we don't give ourselves a break. We don't give ourselves grace. We just have to.
We are hard on ourselves. We are really hard. I am my harshest critic. I am so hard on me. Like, and you know what my husband always says to me? He always says, you know, be good to yourself. He'll just say that because he'll see that I'm like being really hard on me, like just really hard. And he'll say, you know, take a pause, be good to yourself. Dude, like, are you being good to yourself? I actually have incorporated that too. Even with friends, I'll text them like, have you been good to yourself today? What have you done for you today? But it's really hard, right? To do that. It was very, very hard decision. Like I cried. I was like, I'm gonna leave. And I know it's the right decision, but man, you know, I said to one of my friends, it's gonna be so hard for me. Like I removed Slack from my phone. Tomorrow's my last day. And I removed Slack from my phone. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm gonna do, because I'm gonna be like, you know, itching for like some Slack time or whatever. So I'm gonna be like texting a whole bunch of people.
Like, what are you doing?
Like, what are you doing? I miss Slack. I need to be on Slack. But no, it's just really to see that something you've built can live without you is one of the greatest joys.
Yeah.
To see that it has the foundation, that it can grow, is really one of the greatest joys. And knowing that, and like so looking forward to the next leadership and like what they do. I'm really excited to see what they do with it. Curious, excited, like gonna be cheering on, like all of those things. But yeah.
Now that's good. Your mission, your legend will still live on. And so what's next for you after you take a break?
Originally, when I was going to leave, my husband, my son, and I, we were going to go around the world. Obviously, that's not happening.
Right.
Obviously, that's not it.
There are great virtual tours online.
I mean, the amount of things we got to do to go to Target, I cannot imagine. Right now is a whole situation with Target.
Right.
So, you know, I'm writing a book. The first Black woman to get a book deal with Portfolio, which is Penguin's book imprint. It's a business book imprint. So, and then the people who publish Girl Boss and all those popular books. And so I'm really excited about that. It's all about how to build when you're not a rich white guy. Like, how do you actually build something? And so I'm super excited for that. I'm very, very excited to kind of like pause. I was talking to Preston before we got on this call that I've put a 30-day challenge for myself, which is a 30-day in which I'm not going to make any decision on anything. Like, I'm not going to accept any new job. I'm not going to I don't want to do anything. The only thing I'm going to be doing this next 30 days is taking those master classes, you know, like everybody sees on Facebook.
Yes, I love
That's all I'm going to be doing. And even that, and like watching like whatever on Netflix. So, but that's really hard for someone like me to say I'm taking 30 days, at least 30 days, and pausing. I may flirt with even taking longer, and to not do anything for 30 days. Like, I don't know if that's possible for me. So it's a personal challenge for me to not do anything for 30 days.
Absolutely.
I'd
Yeah,
like to.
that's tough. That's tough. But I know,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
tough.
you got to give yourself that time. You got to give that stuff. Like you said earlier, you've been going for so long that, you know, you know,
What is a pause, Kathryn? I literally don't know what that even means for me. Like me, I don't know what it means with me pausing like that. It's scary because I know me busy very well. I know how to work that very well. I don't know me not busy. Like I look at my calendar and I mean, I have like some speaking and things like that, but for the most part, I don't have like anything in my calendar. And my calendars would get crazy. My assistant Alana was like, oh my God, your calendar is so ridiculous. It would be like, I once in a 4-day period was in 6 cities. Like, and it was like crossing the country. Like, I mean, it was like crazy. So to go from that to now being like pausing and calm, and reflective and meditative, I'm really interested to see who the new Kathryn is come July. I'm really interested.
They won't be a new Kathryn. They're not gonna.
Me, but maybe like a little bit more like zen, a little bit more glowy. You know, I'm like just super excited. I have like all of these like YouTube like hair tutorials that I want to do. I want to try out. You know, all these things like that I want to test. And so I'm really, really excited. I'm really, really excited. And I think as you know, for those of you who are entrepreneurs, like you may not be able to take a month off or 2 months, but find ways where you can reclaim some time for yourself. Even if it's 10 minutes. When my son was young, I used to like go in my closet for 10 minutes. So I was just like, I gotta get away from you. Especially when he was like 2. I was like, I gotta get away from you, dude. I need 10 minutes. Like, and I would lock it so he couldn't get in. Cause you know, they're tricky. They're sneaky. And so
really trying to escape.
Yeah, he was trying to get in. He was like, I'm gonna pick this lock and get in. But I think, you know, be good to yourselves. Find that 10 minutes or so that you can reclaim back to yourself and for yourself, and be good to yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kathryn. I was looking out for some final questions. I don't see any. We have one last poll. We wanted to just see kind of what people were doing as far as fundraising or thinking about fundraising, you know, what the size of their current investment round is. So I'm going to give one more second for that, but thank you so much. You are truly a light in the world, and especially, you know, for women of color entrepreneurs, all the work that you have done, and I appreciate you so much. I really do, and I have been following you for so long. I was like, when Preston told me we would be able to have this conversation with you, I was like, oh my gosh, yay! So this is great. We have another Dooney Fund recipient, Brooks Sinclair.
Really? Yes, Brooks. You guys,
yes.
You guys have made my week. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for attending and listening. Thank you, Joy, for being Joy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Preston, for being your Preston self. And you know, it's just been such a pleasure. I just really want all of you to know that the universe is conspiring for your greatness.
Yes, thank you so much. And where can we find you? Where can we keep up with you?
Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I've been not very Instagramming, and I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, but I've come back, and so I'm on Instagram now. I'm gonna definitely do better. Just letting you know, the feed is gonna be very Oprah-esque about me taking pictures of things that I'm growing. I'm just letting you know. I don't have the fabulous Oprah like amazing garden, but it's gonna be stuff about my garden because that's like what I'm into right now. But Instagram, hi, I'm Kathryn is my Instagram. And then Kathryn Finney. If you Google me a lot, like will come up. But Twitter is a great place. LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Facebook even. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from you all.
Great. Well, we look forward to keeping up with you. And also, everyone, demo day for DivInc is on June 25th. So go to divinc.org for more info. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. And thank you again. Kathryn Preston said he sends his love to you. And thank you again.
Congratulations for all the amazing work that you guys have done.
Yes, thank you so
much. It's such a joy to watch it and to watch you all win and to watch your entrepreneurs grow and succeed. So thank you.
Thank you. And I hope to talk to you again.
Yes. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.